This technology is being used as an instrument for control, and it is changing how we relate with others and relate with others in the world, right? So, this what I coin abusive software systems. They are these abusive software systems which exist on everyone's phones. There's almost every person has a phone nowadays. It's over 7 billion phones, one for every person. And with a press of a button, these phones can roll out new software that have been responsible for things like digital payments, digital IDs, contact tracing. These are all real things that have happened because there is a close relationship between the governments of the world and Google and Apple who do their bidding. And somehow they always get the memo and are able to follow the agenda even ahead of time. So as an individual, you have to realize if you decide to commit your resources, time, and attention to the wrong forms of infrastructure, you're just helping that grow, right?
This is a solutions event. This is what's happening.
After 5 successful events in North America, the Freedom Cell Network is partnering with Free Humanity to bring the People's Reset to Bath, UK.
The technocrats at the United Nations and the World Economic Forum are now hosting the Summit of the Future in New York City in September 2024.
Join us in September for the People's Reset UK, our summit for our future.
Over 3 days, we will gather in community, celebrating our victories and successes, whilst continuing to highlight solutions under 5 holistic themes.
Liberate your mind, body, and spirit.
Permaculture and food independence.
Building parallel networks.
Empowering technology.
And building free and conscious communities. 24 top-notch speakers, including Neil Oliver, Charles Dowding, Dan Astin-Gregory, Nigel Hallett, John and Rebecca Bush, and many more.
We'll also be hosting the People's Reset concert featuring international artist Dub FX, as well as Presence, 33, and more talented performers to come. Join us for the People's Reset UK. Visit thegreaterreset.org to learn more and to get your ticket today. Are we in an abusive relationship with technology, with hidden tools that track and surveil our behaviors, our attitudes, and even our movements? Are we really even in a consensual relationship with our technology? To answer some of these questions and more, I'm joined today by Hakeem Anwar, a software engineer and technologist who founded the Take Back Our Tech movement to educate people on how to break free from big tech and embrace privacy-first open source alternatives. But he didn't stop there. He launched the Above phone and the Above laptop and a range of tools to help you guard against online tracking and surveillance. Not only that, he's been running the technology infrastructure for the Freedom Cell Network and the Greater Reset, now the People's Reset. And we're delighted that he'll be joining us in the UK for the People's Reset UK this September. So welcome to the show, Hakeem. It's great to have you here.
Dan, thank you for the wonderful introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, you're someone actually I've wanted to have on the show for a while now because, technology is such, for many of us, it's an essential part of our day-to-day lives. I couldn't do what I do on a day-to-day basis without tools and technology. But I'm increasingly concerned by big tech and the role that it plays in our life and the dominance it has over our life, but also in the current age where everything is being spied upon and surveilled. I'm increasingly looking for alternatives. So it's great to have you here. Now, tell me a little bit, what inspired you to start Take Back Our Tech? What do you see are some of the key issues that are currently driving what you put together there?
Yeah, for me, it was the realization of being down in the trenches, right? And supporting people all over the world. At first, just connecting to the Freedom Cell Network and kind of getting to know their problems and what they were scared of. And some people who, thought that they were being surveilled, they were being targeted. And then I got to see it with my own eyes, what happens to freedom movements. So, the major search engines, of course, they delisted that website and they did their best to try and slow our growth down. And then we got to see spammers and scammers pop up on our networks as well. And so we had to build an entire federated infrastructure to keep these spam bots off of our decentralized Telegram groups, right? There's hundreds of Telegram groups for the Freedom Cell Network. And so through these experiences, I realized, oh man, if there's one thing that's super important right now for someone who is searching for the truth, maybe not going along with the narrative they're seeing in the mainstream media, is that they need to protect themselves digitally. And so just because also myself, I was paranoid about what was going on. And we were doing really good work at the time with Derek and also a bunch of volunteers around the Greater Reset. That's kind of where my first foray into like agorism, kind of living outside of the day-to-day matrix was created. And of course, I wanted to preserve these connections. I wanted to keep the sanctity of our communications and relationships. And so we just went down a rabbit hole into saying, all right, what solutions are actually out there? And then it didn't take that long. After a few months, we had something that worked really well for us, and we started to promote it. And then because we did all this primary research on what are the actual threats and vulnerabilities to our phones and computers, I decided to spread that knowledge and spread the solutions. And for that, we have Take Back Our Tech, takebackourtech.org. It's an educational initiative. We do a lot of tech journalism and tech reporting, but we also make sure that every article has solutions.
Yeah, it's great to hear. And I, for one, have been concerned about my online privacy, not only during COVID, but prior to that, but certainly amplified during COVID. You know, we did over 1,000 episodes essentially criticizing the narratives and those involved in driving the narratives for the 4-year period during, COVID. My face is seen at various protests, and of course my name became quite well known. We reached 25 million people here in the UK over that period, and as a result, it's almost inevitable that the government forces, we know that the 77th Brigade, which is one of the security forces in the United Kingdom, actually a Department of the Army, was out in force to actually try and derail our content. We experienced many of the same things with bots on our Telegram channels and lots of different things to try and actually derail our efforts. So firsthand experience, and it's only heightened my desire to explore solutions in this capacity, because it's become essential. But what about everyday people? Why should everyday people be concerned about this kind of behavior? Obviously the activists like you and I have been out there doing a lot of the trench work, but what about regular people who go about their day-to-day lives? Why do they need to pay attention to these issues?
Yeah, it's a great question. You could kind of feel if you're just following the activists and the stories they're putting out, you might get the sense, hey, I'm just a regular everyday person. I don't really have anything to hide. But the truth of it is that this technology is being used as an instrument for control, and it is changing how we relate with others and relate with others in the world, right? So this what I coin abusive software systems. They are these abusive software systems which exist on everyone's phones. There's almost every person has a phone nowadays. It's over 7 billion phones, one for every person. And with a press of a button, these phones can roll out new software that have been responsible for things like digital payments, digital IDs, contact tracing. These are all real things that have happened because there is a close relationship between the governments of the world and Google and Apple who do their bidding. And somehow they always get the memo and are able to follow the agenda even ahead of time. So as an individual, you have to realize if you decide to commit your resources, time, and attention to the wrong forms of infrastructure, you're just helping that grow, right? There's this term that we call the network effect, and it's essentially the concept: the more people that use a system, the more powerful that system is. Like, take for example, a ride sharing service, right? The more drivers that are on that service, the easier it is to get a ride, and vice versa, to be a rider, because you have different people getting rides. So are we going to decide to put all our eggs in the big tech basket that is just serving to control us, to track us and surveil us? And is there going to be a point where it gets too powerful and we actually get locked out of a lot of different systems because we're not on that? And that is a very real thing that's happening. I mean, one thing I would like to bring up is the new digital identity verification bill that was just proposed by the king this very month. And so just keeping an eye on these things, they're coming, and they're coming fast.
Yeah, I would like to talk about regulation and laws in a moment, because these software issues are one thing and the hardware issues, but actually when you've got governments passing bills and regulation that actually start to incentivize this type of surveillance structure, then I think we're really on a dystopian and slippery slope. But I want to touch on something you kind of made me think about there, which is, when I was growing up, I studied economics and business at school, and they talked about the Monopolies Commission and how, that this entity, government entity, existed to try and prevent any individual company or organization from having too much power. Now, this worked to a degree when companies were kind of domestic. They prevented domestic monopolies, or at least attempted to. But now we have these massive global mega corporations. The Googles of the world, the Alphabets, as they're now known. Facebook, Meta, and all of these companies of increasing size and clout. What degree do you think this is part of the problem? That we have these monopolistic technological companies that have huge influence over our lives, but also now, this private partnerships, public partnerships with governments. It's not just about business anymore, it seems.
Absolutely. As many smart people have pointed out, the reason these big tech companies and these corporations are used is because they aren't under the eye of public scrutiny. They're really not obligated to provide as much transparency as these government departments are. So, when you look back at really old the United States military programs like total information awareness, at a certain point they realized, oh, no way, no way can the government get away with this. We need, I mean, not really a patsy, but we need an organization that can carry this out. And thanks to thanks to surveillance capitalism and also that public-private partnership, these organizations have gotten to the point where they are not responsive to anyone. They can't really be controlled. I think Apple's a really good example of that, how the EU is trying to rein them in and making them more interoperable. But there are plenty of moves in the pockets thanks to all the law on their side, even the control of infrastructure on their side. And they can use this to take away important services from the government. I mean, they honestly have that influence over them just because so many people are dependent on them. Similarly, they have ability to control apps below them. Telegram is a good example of this. They almost got taken off of the App Store in Germany, right? So there's this interesting power dynamic between all these organizations. And so it just comes back to who are you going to, what types of technologies are you going to support? And for my perspective is that the more decentralized, the more open, the more transparent, ideally any technology that's organic that you can run and take yourself is one we should get behind. But it does take more work. It does take more education. It does take more empowerment. You're going to run into the convenience privacy trap where you're going to have to put more work in. And so it's really a collective effort to get us there, which is why events like the People's Reset are so important, because you get to meet in person with other technologists and learn things like this.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because it seems that with any area that we're looking at now that can enhance our freedom, there's almost a trade-off in every instance. It's if you want to break free from big agriculture and big food so that you have greater food independence and security, then it's actually either learning how to grow food yourself or forming networks in your area where you can get a steady supply of the types of foods that you enjoy. And when it comes to technology, it's so easy to go for the user interface and user experience of the big tech solutions. I've had this problem recently, as you know, where we've come up against some particular challenges, and it's easy to say, oh, screw it, we'll just go for the big tech alternative because we need to get this thing done. But actually that's really short-termist, and if we're really going to drive change, then we have to be willing to embrace those alternatives and come that often will come initially with those kind of trade-offs. And it's like any, I pay a lot of attention to the kind of blockchain-based technologies and these emerging techs, and it's almost going back in time, because I also remember as a child, an older child, looking at what happened during the 90s with, the original, prior to big tech becoming big tech, some of these startup companies, you look at some of the user interface of these technologies right at the outset and they were appalling. But look at now where they are today. So it's everything has a development curve, and we have to be willing to set that trade-off. And I think that's the important point, because if we are going to take control of our privacy, then we have to ask which is the lesser of the evils? Is it losing control of your data and your privacy, or is it going through that growth curve, that learning curve, and that potentially sacrificing some of the features that you're used to in order to uphold your principles and values? And that's certainly a decision that I'm facing every single day. But On the alternatives, Hakeem, what are some of the trust markers that you look for personally? What are some of the things that you look for when you're looking at different technologies? Because let's face it, there's a vast array of technologies that we probably use on a day-to-day basis, from our mobile phones, our laptops, hundreds of apps and various other things. How do you discern between all these different alternatives? What do you look for first?
Great question. Yeah, there's a few things. The most important is the transparency behind the software itself, right? So all software is code; they're just programs, and there's this concept of open source, which means that hey, you can look at this program. Then there's also this concept of free and open source, which is hey, not only can you look at the program and study it, but you can take it for yourself and change it and redistribute it. And it's this organic way of creating. So even if there's a break in the chain, even if the developer is corrupted or otherwise goes offline or even wants to stop work, the work can be carried forward by other people. And so I think that's the beautiful natural way of creating software. Whereas the current status quo is you have these corporations building the software behind closed doors from influence from governments, from policy, from UN policy that hasn't been released yet. And that's why we see the direction proprietary technology, meaning hidden technology owned by someone that can't be taken elsewhere. And what that ends up meaning is you don't own your phone and they can deploy software updates at any time they want. You don't own your computer. They can deploy these updates at any time they want and even potentially even take down your machine out of their own lack of out of their own lack of professionalism. And that's exactly what we saw happen this a few weeks ago with Microsoft and this company called CrowdStrike. So I think that people get the sense. I mean, Dan, we were talking about it, right? These companies are so big, they make so much money, they're worth billions of dollars, they have some of the smartest people in the earth. But that doesn't change the fact they can still be incompetent. They can still be careless. They have so much data they can't even keep track of it, and that's why you see these big companies being hacked all the time. That's why you see these massive disruptions in service. Some people might argue that this is by design. I think that it could realistically be both. The important thing is to use a device where all your data is on the device and it's not being sent out to the cloud. And that's exactly the philosophy we've tried to take with the Above phone, which is using open source software. It's using a operating system called Graphene OS, which is the highest standard in mobile privacy and security. And these are things we've validated and verified ourselves. And then what we did was we didn't develop the operating system, but we did develop the ecosystem around it and put it together in a product that was easy to use. Because really, that's the missing link for people.
Yeah, so I want to talk more about the Above phone, but before we go there, identifying how to find these kind of free and open source technologies. Obviously, you've got a great product suite, and the thing is, what you find is when you get a privacy first organization or a tech provider, they're very transparent about that. They're very open. That's one of their guiding principles. But it's almost like when you go to the supermarket to buy food. If you want to find some gluten-free food now, there's food labeling standards that say you've got to have gluten-free written on the label. In fact, there's a whole aisle usually dedicated to the product. Now, with technology, it's not quite as simple. If you know which companies are pioneers in this space and they're actually driving forward, and thank goodness there is actually whole sectors now emerging, decentralized technologies. But yeah, how does a lay person distinguish between what is big tech or proprietary technology versus something that's open source or the types of technology you've described here? What are some of the telltale signs they should look for?
Absolutely. The two main things that anyone can look for is looking through their privacy policy and just seeing what types of information they collect. Most companies, are running cloud services. So you're connecting to their computers over the internet. Inherently, there's some information that's going to be sent off your computer. You would expect if you're using a chat application, your chats are going onto that service, right? So there's some common sense things that are for sure going to be sent. But then there's other things like specific fingerprint characteristics about your computer, your IP address, your location, any advertising IDs. So when you look through a privacy policy, you can privacy policies are super long. No one sits down and reads through all of it, but you can at least Control F to find the types of data that are being shared with the company. And as soon as you start seeing, okay, you start seeing things like, all right, we collect this data, but it's for the improvement of our services. They're just trying to frame the additional data they're taking that they may not necessarily need to take. But of course, this is all on a case by case basis. It really depends on the company. Some companies are way worse than others. One thing I could recommend everyone that you'll get a sense of how private a company is by using an ad blocker. So on most browsers, there's this ad blocker called uBlock Origin, and it will actually tell you, hey, here's all the different companies or different websites you are connecting to when you visit their website on the browser, right? It's not just one website you're seeing, it's a collection of a lot of different websites and scripts, really, the things that are adding additional functionality. And so you will see things like Google, you will see things like Facebook, you might see things like Amazon. And the presence of these scripts are letting you know, hey, this company is sharing data with these companies. There's some deal going on there. Now they might try and say it's for analytics or advertising, but that's the user's privacy is not at the forefront. It's not their priority. So that's another telltale sign. So reading the privacy policy, using an ad blocker and studying what's on there. Those are some really good ways to check. And then, of course, ensuring that the software is open source. You can actually go look at the code somewhere. You don't necessarily have to understand it, but just see that, all right, the code is published somewhere. And the last thing would be self-hosting. Do they allow you to run the software yourself? And if they do, that's a really good sign, because it means that even if their service shuts down, you can continue to use it yourself. A lot of the software, if not all the software on the above phone, is designed exactly that way. So, for instance, our chat protocol XMPP, it's got all the features a Telegram and WhatsApp would have. It has end-to-end encrypted video calls, voice calls, messaging. But the important part is you can take XMPP software and run it on your own server and create a communication service for your own community. So even if above is not around or something happens to us, you can pass the torch forward and run things for yourself. And I think we are going to see a shift in consciousness when it comes to technology, where instead of using these behemoth big tech providers, we're going to go back down to the community level, and we're going to see our local trusted technology persons running our own email service, running our communication services, running our cloud storage service. I mean, the list is endless. And so it's really exciting to see that take place.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, Hakeem, it's like, localism is seen as an alternative to globalism, and it's almost like decentralized technology is the alternative to centralized technologies. It's taking the power back to an individual level. It does come with challenges as a business. I'm on both sides of the equation. I'm a consumer and a business owner. As a business owner, you want to be able to, market what you're doing and be able to figure out, what's working, what's not working, and to do that in a privacy centric way is challenging. And it can lead to kind of almost like this puritanical thinking about how do I do this completely privacy and open source. And it comes with many different challenges, which we'll hold for another time. But you've talked about the way that the above phone works. For a non-technological audience, can you give us a sense of, what is it that's different about the above phone, and how does it guard against things like surveillance and invasive trackers? How does this specifically work? What's the technology behind it?
Absolutely, and I'm happy to show you. The first thing is that it's actually what it doesn't have, right? It's you go to this is an analogy. You go to a grocery store and you're pulling cans up off the shelf. You're reading the back of the ingredients. What doesn't it have is sometimes just as important or more important. So in this case, it doesn't have any connections to big technology companies. So there's no connections to Google, Samsung, Facebook, Apple. Whereas on a normal phone, not only would you connect to the manufacturer of the phone or the developer of the operating system, but you would be connecting to these third-party vendors that are constantly on there. And because the normal operating systems are proprietary, you don't know how often they're calling back. So in independent study, there is this study from Dublin, Ireland, Trinity College there, that saw that normal Android and Apple phones were connecting back home every 5 minutes, right? And they were sending unique identifiers about the phone that could specifically point to your phone your hardware, your phone number, the SIM that you put in your phone. These are all being collected at a granular level by Google and Apple, and they can use that to track you at different places in the ecosystem. So that's just what it doesn't have. There's no Google services by default. And then there are additional protections. There's additional privacy features that you get. There's more technical things like randomizing your Wi-Fi address so that that is not picked up when you connect to a Wi-Fi network or you otherwise have your phone available. So there's things like that. There's also things that related to application permissions where you can control whether an application has access to your microphone or your camera, and you can just keep that disabled all the time. You can cut applications off from the internet. You can even do things like normally, let's say you use WhatsApp, it asks for permission to see your photos. And what you don't realize is when you grant it permission to see your photos, it actually is able to see the data on your entire phone. There's no way to isolate and sandbox that. So one of the best features about Graphene OS is that you can dictate, hey, I only want this app to have access to this folder and nothing else, right? So you're becoming able to give an informed consent of the data you want to share. So even if you're using this phone, which by the way, all the apps you know and love will likely work. There's like I would say close to 98% of the apps will work. There's only a few apps that don't work out of the box. But even if you're using something like WhatsApp that does work, you have a lot more tools at your disposal to control what data is transmitted and sent. And then you also have good software services kind of in the middle between you and WhatsApp, like the VPN service we run, or you can use any other VPN service to help protect your data further.
So is this the kind of why you called it above phone? Because it kind of provides a layer between the user and those technology services. Is that the kind of basic premise behind the way this the tool set operates?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's an ecosystem of technologies working together. It's not just the phone. It's not just your cell service. It's not just the software services you use on the phone. It's all of that together, right? This is a holistic approach to technology, and it's dealing with the 80% of surveillance, right? This mass surveillance, which these companies at the highest level, they're very lazy, right? It's only through your consent that they can capture all this data. This phone, I mean, I just have to say this. Some people think that, this phone could hide them from intelligence agencies at the highest level. And I just want to answer that is there's nothing that could really protect you from someone at the highest levels, right? There are many different ways to break into someone's technology. Many of them haven't been discovered yet. What this is protecting you from is mass surveillance that is being used to infect everyone through these big tech software services, these abusive software services. So this phone is perfect for that, perfect for divesting from these systems. And yeah, I would love to show you later on the call. I'll give a live demo. I think we'll have a little bit of time for that. And if you're interested in learning more about the phones, you can go to abovephone.com and you'll see that there's some resources in the learn part of the navigation bar. And you'll see these phones are available internationally, and we have a special discount code for you too, as well, which will be in the description. So I highly invite you to check it out because even though some of the things I'm saying may sound really technical, we have made it really easy. When you get a phone, you get a free live call, kind of just like this call we're having now, Dan, where you work with a support engineer and he helps you take your old phone and helps you migrate to the new phone. So we really wanted to make it as easy for people as possible. We think you're going to love the phone. We think it's easy to use. We have all sorts of people from all over the world. We have 80-year-old grandmas sending encrypted messages and using private cryptocurrency. It's pretty amazing. So I just want to say you have the capability to do this.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, and the service you offer is akin to like going back to the old days where you'd go to the store and they'd set your phone for you, put the SIM card in and transfer your contacts and all that sort of stuff. It's the equivalent of transitioning from, the mainstream tech to decentralized tech, which is amazing. Now, question that's probably going to be on some of our audience's mind: what if you're an Apple user? What's the what does this mean? Do you offer solutions for Apple users, or does this require a shift in technology set altogether?
Yeah, so Apple users are I would say they're the ones who have to transition the most, right? The mental models of using Apple. There's things like Apple got people used to doing that aren't aren't representative of how this technology actually works. So one example of that is like iMessage and FaceTime. What people don't realize about iMessage and FaceTime is when you use those, when someone calls you on the phone, that call is actually routed to Apple before it even hits your phone. It goes through Apple first. And what people have to do when they start to shift to a above phone, they have to disable iMessage, they have to disable FaceTime, simply so Apple stops getting all their communications routed to them. The reason Apple does this is so you can text videos to each other, which normally the SMS protocol wouldn't allow you to send these high definition videos, but Apple has kind of changed it and made it an internet messaging service. So you could do that within the Apple ecosystem. The only problem is they manipulate people into thinking that these things are part of how a normal phone should work. And they also treat people who aren't using Apple as second class citizens. That's why you get that gross puke colored message, the green Android text. And that's why girls kind of frown at you when you text them and your message turns out green, which is ridiculous, right? We shouldn't be treated like that. But Apple is more than happy to use its power and influence inside its walled garden. So, long story short, you can still do some of the things like you can do video calls and you can do FaceTimes, but you're just not going to use the Apple services. You're going to use our open source decentralized services like Jitsi, which even if you start using that, the other person doesn't need to have an above phone. They can simply join through the web browser. They can join through an app. It works on any device, right? So we're the open source community is not going to be as petty as Apple. They're going to allow their technology to be universal and work on Apple devices, even if Apple doesn't grant them the same rights. So that's a little bit of the transition, but the operating system is using an Android-based operating system. So if you're using a Google phone, a Samsung phone, these are all Android-based operating systems. It's going to really look and behave the same way. One last thing I'll add is that the developers of these open source operating systems have really learned a lot, and they are starting to copy a lot of elements from Apple. But I will say you can do far more with this phone than you can do on an Apple phone. So I think you will be pleasantly surprised.
Thanks, Hakeem. Well, let's take a look at the product. You said we can have a look around. Do you want to share your screen and give us an insight into what people can look and see when they use an above phone?
Absolutely. So can you see the screen?
I can, yes.
Excellent. So this is what the above phone looks like. When you get this out of the box, this is how it comes to you. You can see there's different apps on the phone, all organized in folders. All of these apps are open source, and most of them are free in open source. So what does that mean? That means that, again, the code for the software is transparent, and anyone can take it and remake it. So we have different forms of new communications. This is the video conferencing tool that I was talking about. And so this is, you can just hop into a room here. And then with just a simple click, you can actually invite people using a link. So you could send it to their browser and they can join it this way. So this is kind of how a FaceTime would work on the above phone. And the beautiful part is you could use this phone on Wi-Fi alone. You don't necessarily have to put in a SIM card. So you would have to be in the range of a cafe or a Wi-Fi network, maybe at your home. But instead of using phone calls and text messages, you could use our internet-based phone number. So let me just show you that. I will show you this here. So you can see this is our messaging service. This is based on XMPP, which is a chat protocol software. And what we have done is we've partnered with a company that will bridge this chat protocol out to the phone network. So you yourself, you can get a US number, you could get a Canada number, and you can start making international calls to other countries. And you can do this all for $5 a month, payable in Bitcoin. From the other person's perspective, you show up just as a normal phone number, right? So they can't really tell a difference. But from your end, you don't have a SIM card. You can text them, they can text you. You can call them, they can call you, and you can use this on any device. So really, you could be text messaging from your computer. So we've taken, so we're able to recreate some of the best parts of Apple's ecosystem, right? The iMessage, where you can text from your computer and it shows up on your phone. You can still do that in an open source environment like this one. Another cool thing is we have this offline voice keyboard where where you can just start talking into the phone and it will record your voice and transcribe it into text. And it does this completely offline. This is from the wonderful people at the Fudo Institute in the United States that built this software. So we have this on the phone and it works really well, as you can see, right? It's transcribing it, it's adding in punctuation when it needs to. There's a few misspellings in there, but hey, for a busy guy like you, Dan, this is going to save you a lot of time, and you can still communicate, and you can do it privately. I'm going to show you how to actually reduce an application's permissions. So you can see here we're looking at the Telegram app. And what we can do is we can actually disable these different permissions. You can remove the application's access to the internet. So for some apps that you might download, it's like a ruler or something, or it'll be like a balance. That doesn't need to be connected to the internet, right? You can just turn that off completely. So you have that power, which you normally wouldn't on a normal phone. And then you can do things like set up storage scopes, right? This is what I was talking about earlier, where instead of giving it access to your entire phone, you can just give it access to one folder. So I'm going to give it access to my wallpapers folder. And now I only am going to be able to send wallpapers through Telegram, but it isn't able to see the rest of the files on my phone. This isn't so important with Telegram because the app is open source, but it is important with other apps like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and things like that. One other cool thing, and then I'll pass it back to you for a second, Dan, is the contacts. The same thing I'm doing with the storage on the phone, I can also allow for contacts. So let me do this with this app actually. So permissions, contacts, and I'm going to set up some contact scopes for this one. So now I can say, all right, hey, I'm using WhatsApp. I don't want to give you access to my entire contact books. That's ridiculous. I'm not going to talk to everyone on it, but I will talk to Bob Smith. I will talk to Eve, and I will talk to Frank. So let me just give it access to those contacts. And so this is a great way to protect your privacy, because there are some apps that even pretend to be privacy centric, and they do things like collect your contacts. Signal is one of those apps, and unfortunately, there are a few red flags there like that, taking people's contacts and also getting funding from the U.S. government through the Department of Media that you have to watch out for. There are fake privacy projects like that. So that's a little bit of a segue, but again, these are all things that you wouldn't be able to do on a normal phone, and you can also turn off the microphone, the camera, and the location at a global level. So yeah, this phone is packed with a lot of features, and as you can see, it's pretty easy to use, and we look forward to teaching you how to use it.
Talk to us about how the laptop works. Does it work in the same way? Does it work in sync with your mobile? How does that all come together?
Absolutely. So the phone we call Above Phone, and we released a laptop this year where we called it Above Book. It's taking a lot of the same philosophy and concepts and applying it to a laptop. I'm sure you've heard of Linux, which is the third operating system that is growing in market share. You're actually seeing developing countries explode in the use of Linux, partially because the Linux and the open source community has come such a long way in the past 5 years. It's becoming easy to use. It's becoming stable. There's not so many bugs. And so we set out with the goal of, hey, can we make an advanced Linux laptop that is easy to use and does everything you would expect it to? And the answer to that turned out to be Above Book. So Above Book is available for sale now. It's actually, if you go on our website, abovephone.com, you'll see at the top a shop, and then you can see laptops there, and that's the landing page for the Above Book, which will tell you more about it. But essentially, this is a laptop that uses open source software to its core. There aren't any forced updates like Microsoft. You know, when they treat you like a kid, it's like, whoa, hold on there. I know you've got some important work to do, but I'm just going to sit here for 4 hours and update your computer. It doesn't do that. And you also have you have a great degree of privacy. So there aren't big tech connections being made when you use this laptop. You're installing applications from decentralized sources, really from individuals just like yourself who are packaging the software for you. So you have access to the largest amount of open source software available, which means you have alternatives, right? Instead of using Microsoft Office, you're going to use something called OnlyOffice, which uses the same native format as Microsoft Office. So it looks and feels like Microsoft Office. It's even compatible. You can work with people on Windows computers. They can send you documents that they've edited, and you can edit them in turn. But it is not spying on you. It's not controlling your documents. It's not doing any of that yucky stuff that you would expect on a proprietary operating system. So we've made it incredibly easy to use. One of the complaints that people have about Linux laptops is, oh, I don't want to learn the terminal. We really listened and responded to that and said and made it a goal. Hey, can you use this laptop and maintain it without using the terminal? And we have managed to accomplish that. And our operating system is based off of Arch Linux, and we have customized it, and we've created our own operating system essentially, and we're calling it Above OS. So there's plenty of details on the landing page site. We have 4 different models in stock. We have something that is kind of the best of all worlds. It's light, it's fast, it's powerful. It's got a beautiful screen. That's the Carbon. Then we also have business class laptops. We have a creative laptop that can flip open 360 degrees and comes with a stylus. And then we also have our budget. So I invite you to check those out. And maybe at a later date, I can hop on and actually share more about the laptop with you. But thank you for letting me share that.
Yeah, thank you, Hakeem. I want to close out with talking a little bit about the People's Reset. That's part of the reason we reconnected, and delighted that you're going to be rejoining us in the UK for the event. The event is structured over 5 different themes, as the event has been done since it launched in 2020 as the Greater Reset. And decentralized technology, empowering technology is one of our key themes again in the UK, which you're featuring as part of and helping to coordinate. With events like this, people are hungry to go and learn about how to improve their health and their well-being, and how to manage their finances. But technology, a lot of people are scared of the technology kind of question. Hopefully today's conversation has demystified a lot of people. But why would you say attending the technology sessions are so important for people right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so one thing I'll bring up is this UK bill that we were talking about earlier. Digital ID systems are on the way, and they are dead set on making sure everyone has a digital ID. Now, the beautiful part is, how do you opt out? I don't have a phone that supports it. That's how you opt out. Or I don't have a phone at all. Those are 2 really valid ways. But unfortunately, these types of systems are going to continue to be rolled out. We're seeing things like the UN Digital Compact, which is being voted on around the same time as our event. I mean, our event is mirroring our the People's Reset is inverting the Summit of the Future conference held by the UN, where over 100 countries are going to agree on pushing forward these sustainable development goals. And part of that is the UN Digital Compact, which, just reading through it, I'm going to be doing a more in-depth piece on it. But what I've learned so far is that they want more governance of the internet, and they also want to control these populations that are living outside of the reaches of the internet by getting them connected onto it, and by getting them enrolled in these digital ID schemes, even things like cryptocurrency and CBDCs. They would like to connect these populations to it, because it's really these populations that are the biggest threat to the United Nations. These are the gray markets that Samuel Edward Konkin, who largely inspired the Freedom Cell Network and the Greater Reset and the People's Reset, it's that these are the populations that are existing outside of the control of taxes, rules, and regulations. And when you come to the People's Reset, you begin to understand, right? We talk about a lot of these ideas, we watch it online, but you don't truly start to understand until you come to live it. And that's exactly what the Greater Reset is, which I've been involved since day one with Derek. And once it's like, it was literally part of my transformation. What is it going to be like as people begin to live outside the rules and the regulations? Well, you'll get to experience it for 3 days. Many of the people you'll see there aren't as they're not focused on playing by the rules. A lot of the vendors, they're accepting barter, and it's a really open place for you to come share your gifts. So that's kind of been my message, is to come prepared with what you have to share, whether that's a land project, whether that's promoting yourself as someone with skills who wants to get involved in a land project. This event can change your life. It absolutely has done mine. And I have friends, personal friends, who through the Greater Reset, through the People's Reset, have connected with their tribe, even simply by watching the event. So that's one of the greatest things it can do, is help you grow as a person, and just spend a few days living this new type of lifestyle here.
Yeah, I'm so pleased you said that, because I think when events like this come along, there's almost an assumption with the kind of period of time that we've just come out of, with the kind of expansion of this great reset ideology in response to COVID. People almost expect these events just to be a continuation of that conversation about what went wrong during COVID, and conversations about the vaccine or conversations about policy, and the greater reset and now the people's reset is very different to that. It's a completely different set of expectations that people will have when they come to this event, because it's not about that. It's not about recounting what went wrong during the last few years. In fact, it's the polar opposite. It's really about looking at how we move forward. It's really about looking at solutions, and it's solutions that not only are systemic, meaning that they can help us to actually transform the systems, these oppressive and unhealthy systems that we're part of, but actually, more importantly, at the individual level, transform. So if you're going to the health day, you're learning how to optimize your own health, which ultimately is the best way to opt out of big pharma, because you're taking care of your health. You want to opt out of big food. You're learning how to grow food. You're learning how to connect with other growers. You want to decentralize from big tech. We've got a whole session on that. You want to learn how to grow your own kind of free conscious community in your local area, connect with like-minded people. We've got a whole session on that. So there's so much. There's such an enriching and a whole session on parallel systems and alternative networks, and counter economics, and things you touched upon. So each one of these areas can actually directly enrich the quality of each of our lives, which is, to me, why I'm so excited about this event, because you can go to one of the COVID summits, and I've been going to those, and I'm not speaking about any specific COVID summit, but and I've been part of these. I've attended them, I've spoken at them, I've helped host them, for goodness sake. But they have real value in helping us to make sense of what's going on in the world. But once we've kind of understood some of the key problems, the goal is then, well, what can we do? And that's the biggest question I normally see in the comments on any video is, well, what can we do about it? Well, this summit, having personally experienced the event in Mexico this year, is really about directly addressing that. It's that real great balance between systemic change and individual transformation, which is why it's so powerful. And having this conversation today with you, Hakeem, hopefully it'll open people's eyes to a whole new world and go, wow, I didn't even know this was possible. And this is across all 5 domains. So what would be your call to action to people at home who maybe sat on the fence and not sure? There's lots of events happening in the UK this summer. What would you say to prompt them to come along and join us in Bath this September?
Use it as a jumping off point for your own adventure. You might have been felt called to a greater purpose. This is exactly how you get to play and explore with that purpose. So whatever you have to share, whether you could teach myself, or maybe you could teach Dan a thing or two about health or anything for that matter, spirituality, come prepared with that, and use the People's Reset as a jumping off point, because this is one of the only events where it is completely decentralized, and anyone coming to the event can create a workshop, and we will promote that for you. And so the hundreds of attendees who are going to join will actually be there for what you have to share, right? So it will mark the start to your agorist lifestyle, right? To see what you can add on to this event. And then, of course, I have so many favorite moments from last year's event. The opening ceremony with Paula and Yoshi was so incredible, paying homage and respect to Mother Nature and the earth, and just grounding that. You don't really realize it until you're in a room with all those people, but the levels of consciousness that are reached, it's very special. It's you couldn't put it into words, but that you are provided for, you are supported, you're with family, and you're part of this global transformation. And that feels really good. So I invite you. I know that some people out there, the event is a few months out. You might have to figure out travel. You might have to figure out flights to get here, but it is so worth it. Just make the commitment, get your ticket, and everything else will sort itself out. We also have a amazing lodging and accommodations group where people are helping each other get to the event. So I invite you to check that out. I think we have a Telegram chat for that group. And yeah, there were so many amazing takeaways from the last event, but part of it is we want to see the light shining in you, because we all have something to teach each other.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hakeem. You've got me really excited. I mean, I'm excited on a daily basis. I'm involved in the co-creating this with you guys. So it's a real honor and a privilege to serve alongside you and pick on this amazing event. And I want to thank you for your insights today and hopefully opening people's eyes to what's possible when it comes to technology. It's often, probably one of the things that people don't think about on a day-to-day basis, despite the fact they use it continually throughout the day, most people at least. So it's really illuminating to understand that there is a different pathway that you can take to break free from big tech and these big systems, and how you can actually preserve your privacy, and how you can support organizations that are doing, really it's a different form of grassroots movement. It's one thing going to a protest. Well, actually embracing decentralized technology is a fantastic form of protest, a really liberating one, which is really, really where I get most excited. And, I just feel this is just the beginning. There's so much happening, and, the People's Reset is a great place to come and learn about it. So Hakeem, it's great to be with you here today. Please do share this episode. All the links we talked about today, the above phone, the above book, the People's Reset, the chat groups we talked about, they'll all be in the description. So whether you're watching on one of the video platforms or listening on audio, you'll just go to the description and you'll see all those links there available to you. So it's my hope that we'll see you in person and join us at the Greater Reset in Bath on the 27th to the 29th of September. It's a really important time to connect and to share ideas. And as Hakeem said, come and bring your gifts, bring your knowledge, bring your talents. This is a really community-based event. So look forward to seeing you there. And again, thank you, Hakeem, for being here on the show with me today.
Thank you so much, Dan. Many blessings.
This is a solutions event. This is what's happening.
After 5 successful events in North America, the Freedom Cell Network is partnering with Free Humanity to bring the People's Reset to Bath, UK.
The technocrats at the United Nations and the World Economic Forum are now hosting the Summit of the Future in New York City in September 2024.
Join us in September for the People's Reset UK, our summit for our future.
Over 3 days, we will gather in community, celebrating our victories and successes, whilst continuing to highlight solutions under 5 holistic themes.
Liberate your mind, body, and spirit.
Permaculture and food independence.
Building parallel networks.
Empowering technology.
And building free and conscious communities. 24 top-notch speakers, including Charles Dowding, Dan Astin-Gregory, Nigel Hallett, John and Rebecca Bush, and many more.
We'll also be hosting the People's Reset concert featuring international artist Dub FX, as well as Presence, 33, and more talented performers to come. Join us for the People's Reset UK. Visit thegreaterreset.org to learn more and to get your ticket today.